Welcome to today's deep dive. I'm your host, and I'm thrilled you could join us today. I'm here with our resident expert to unpack something pretty fascinating.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this one. We have a lot to get into.
We really do. So, I want you to imagine just for a second that you get a parking ticket. It's annoying, sure. Like a $20 fine for parking too close to a fire hydrant.
Right, standard bad day stuff. You just pay it and grumble about it on the drive home.
Exactly. You pay it, you move on with your life. But imagine you have a second choice. You could march down to City Hall, scream that you actually own the street, forge a fake property deed to prove it, and end up getting your car impounded and facing felony fraud charges.
Wow. I mean, when you put it like that, it sounds completely absurd. Why on earth would anyone rationally choose that second option?
Right, it completely defies self-preservation. But we see this kind of catastrophic escalation happen all the time.
We really do. Especially when human ego or, fragile self-narratives and power dynamics are threatened. People will literally set their own lives on fire simply to prove they aren't afraid of the heat.
And that is exactly what we are putting under the microscope today. We are looking at a translated text analysis, simply titled Words or Text, which documents a real-life interpersonal conflict.
And to be clear, we are not looking at this as petty internet gossip. We are treating this incident as a rigorous academic data set.
Right, our mission today is to deconstruct the psychological dynamics of an escalating dispute. We really want to explore what happens when an individual who is just, attempting to have a normal relationship collides with someone operating on a rigid, power-driven behavioral loop.
Yeah, and the inciting incident in this data set sets the stage perfectly for that collision. We have a narrator and we have a subject.
And the subject crosses a clear boundary in their online chats, right?
Exactly. And rather than just backing off when called out, the subject goes on the offensive. He makes a furious, preemptive WeChat complaint to their school or institution against the narrator.
Wow, it's that classic strike first so you control the narrative maneuver. He's trying to paint himself as the victim before she can report his boundary crossing.
Yep. So let's look at the subject's options after the narrator inevitably pushes back and files a legitimate, fact-based complaint about his actual behavior.
Okay, so option A. He could just honestly admit that his online behavior was inappropriate. He could write a simple self-criticism, offer a baseline apology, and get a minor verbal reprimand.
Right, and then go on to enjoy his summer vacation. His family would never know. His future remains unobstructed.
It's the exact equivalent of paying that $20 parking ticket. A completely painless off-ramp is sitting right in front of him.
But he chooses option B. He flies into an absolute rage. And to justify this anger to the administration, he fabricates an entirely fake romantic relationship with the narrator.
Wait, a totally fake relationship?
Yes, completely fabricated. He tries to upgrade this issue from a simple inappropriate chat dispute into this messy emotional relationship entanglement.
And what happens because of that?
Well, the consequence of this lie is that he receives a severe warning from the school. He actively chooses the felony fraud charge over the parking ticket.
It's like someone burning down their own house just to prove they aren't afraid of fire. Why would anyone rationally choose option B when option A is so painless?
Well, to understand that choice, we really have to throw out the concept of rationality as a universal standard. The text provides a framework for this.
Okay, what kind of framework?
The subject was trapped in what the analysis refers to as a specific gender or sex-based script. His ego just could not process the objective reality of the situation.
Which was that he was being rightfully accused of bad behavior by a woman.
Exactly. And crucially, by a woman who had refused his advances. The text actually uses a very potent phrase here. She was a woman who refused to be chosen.
Refused to be chosen. Wow. That phrasing implies that the act of choosing is entirely one-sided. Like she is merely an object waiting on a shelf for him to pick her up.
That is exactly it. In his internal script, he is the protagonist. He's the active agent with the power to choose, and the women in his life are just supporting characters whose only role is to accept that choice.
So when the narrator rejects him and then actively holds him accountable, it creates this massive cognitive dissonance for him.
Precisely. He cannot accept a narrative where he is simply someone who acted inappropriately and got caught. He has to force her into a conceptual box that aligns with his worldview.
And I assume aligns with what he hopes is the school authorities' worldview too.
Right, so he forces her into the box of the crazy ex-girlfriend. By upgrading a clear-cut case of harassment into a relationship entanglement, he's trying to muddy the waters.
Because a relationship implies mutual participation, right? It suggests a messy breakup where both sides share the blame.
Yes. He fabricated the romance to make his own extreme anger make sense to himself. His operating system simply couldn't handle the truth of his own irrelevance to her.
That is so wild. And the text reveals this really poignant moment where the narrator reflects on all of this. She expresses this deeply human regret.
Yeah, she says, we originally could have just been casual chat buddies sharing our daily lives.
Which is such a normal, relatable wish. We all have people in our lives who we just, exchange memes with or complain about the weather to. It's low stakes and pleasant. She was just mourning the loss of a simple, frictionless human connection.
She was. But when you connect that wish to the broader psychological profile of the subject, it reveals that this, what could have been, was a complete illusion from the start.
Really? An illusion?
Yeah, because the subject does not possess a casual chat mode. His social operating system doesn't allow for lateral, equal relationships at all.
So how does he operate them?
According to the text's analysis, his behavior is strictly governed by a three-step mechanical loop. Assess, position, control.
Assess, position, control. If we break that down mechanically, it sounds like a computer algorithm executing a command.
It really does. Think about the people in your own life who treat every interaction as a transaction. When this subject interacts with someone, he doesn't see a potential friend. First, he enters the assess phase.
Where he's scanning the target, right? Like, what can this person provide for me? What is their social capital?
Exactly. Where are their emotional vulnerabilities? What are their boundaries? And the next is the position phase.
Where he maneuvers himself into a role within their life structure.
Right, a role that grants him maximum leverage. That could be as a confidant, a mentor, or a romantic partner. And finally, he reaches the control phase.
And that's where he implements mechanisms to ensure they comply with his needs?
Yes, and crucially, to lock their exit paths so they cannot leave the dynamic.
That is genuinely chilling. And the text actually provides evidence of this system in action with another individual, right? Referred to in the data set as 045.
Yeah, 045. And the timeline there alone is just staggering. Within just 2 weeks of interacting with 045, the subject hooked up with her twice, obsessively screen recorded their digital interactions, established deep physical memory.
Wait, all in 2 weeks?
All in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And he attempted to lock her exit path with what the text calls a nuclear button.
A nuclear button. That concept seems vital to understanding the control phase. It isn't just about emotional manipulation, is it?
No, a nuclear button implies mutually assured destruction, or, ultimate leverage. In the context of his screen recording habit, it suggests he was gathering compromising material.
Like digital proof of intimacy or vulnerable confessions that he could hold over her head. It's a failsafe.
Exactly. If she tries to leave, he can detonate her social reputation. Taking 2 weeks to establish physical intimacy and immediately construct a blackmail infrastructure, that is not the pacing of a relationship. That's the pacing of a hostile takeover.
But wait, the narrator explicitly mentions feeling a genuine chat buddy vibe at the beginning of their interactions. They were exchanging daily updates.
Right. There was a period where she genuinely believed they were having normal conversations.
So if he is constantly running this aggressive algorithm, how do we explain that window of apparent normalcy? Like, was there a brief moment where he was acting normal?
Not at all. What the narrator perceived as a casual, friendly exchange was actually his assess phase happening in real time. He was gathering information.
So because the narrator is an articulate, opinionated person, the interaction just looked normal on the surface.
Exactly. She was responding to him with the expectation of human connection. But underneath that surface, he was mapping her perimeter.
Ah, I see.
It's like when a hunter sits quietly in the woods watching a deer. The woods appear perfectly peaceful, right? But the hunter isn't enjoying the scenery. He is calculating the wind speed and the distance for the shot.
Oh, wow, that is a great analogy. The illusion of normalcy was entirely projected by the narrator's own goodwill. The casual chat buddy phase was really just a loading screen, while his software figured out the best way to hack her system.
That's a perfect way to put it. And the true nature of his software only becomes visible when the hack fails. We get to see the mechanical breakdown when his control phase is thwarted.
So let's trace that timeline of failure because it is incredibly revealing. Step 1, he crosses a boundary, attempting to execute the position phase.
Right. And then step 2, she rejects him and stops responding, completely denying in that position.
Which leads to step 3. He deploys his primary punitive weapon, which the text identifies as cold violence. He initiates the silent treatment, abruptly withdrawing all warmth, communication, and attention.
And we should clarify, cold violence is a highly specific psychological tactic. It relies heavily on inducing anxiety. The perpetrator withdraws, creating a void.
And the expectation is that the target will become destabilized, right?
Exactly. Destabilized by the sudden absence of validation. The goal is that they will scramble to fill the void, usually by apologizing, compromising their boundaries, and submitting to the perpetrator's terms just to restore the relationship.
It is such a classic power play. It's like a utility company cutting off the power to a residential building. They flip the switch from the main grid, plunging the people inside into total darkness.
Right, and then they sit back and wait.
Yeah, they expect the residents to panic in the dark, scramble to find their checkbooks, and beg to pay whatever exorbitant fee is demanded just to get the lights turned back on.
But that utility company strategy assumes one crucial, fundamental thing. It only works if the building is actually hooked up to their power grid in the first place.
Oh, exactly. His deployment of cold violence failed spectacularly because the narrator didn't rely on his grid for her emotional electricity.
She didn't derive her self-worth or stability from his attention at all. The text describes her position beautifully. She was an unlocatable node in his system.
An unlocatable node. I love that. Like a hacker trying to ping an IP address that simply does not exist on the network. The command just times out.
Right. You cannot close an access port that was never opened. He believed his sudden silence would be this crushing punishment. He anticipated frantic messages asking what she did wrong.
But instead, she remained entirely indifferent. She hadn't passively suffered his silence. She had actively chosen to cut the connection the moment he crossed her boundary.
Exactly. His weaponized silence wasn't a punishment to her. It was just quiet.
So the utility company cuts the power, and they look out the window expecting to see a terrified customer in a dark house. But instead, they see the narrator sitting in a brightly lit living room, completely unaffected, because her house runs on independent solar power.
That is spot on. And this total failure of his primary weapon is what triggers the catastrophic system crash we discussed at the beginning.
Because when cold violence yields no results, his internal script encounters a fatal error.
Yep. He throws a tantrum, fabricates the fake relationship, and escalates the issue to the school authorities. Since he possesses no internal control over her, he attempts to use an external system.
Like the institutional hierarchy of the school. He's trying to force her back into a dynamic with him using the school as a lever.
Exactly. And the narrator's response to this frantic escalation is arguably the most fascinating part of this entire analysis.
It really is. While he's spiraling out of control and literally setting his own life on fire, she doesn't get dragged into the flames. She fundamentally shifts the dynamic.
She transforms this deeply personal, messy dispute into an academic observation. The contrast in their behaviors during the fallout is just a masterclass in retaining agency.
Because he is completely off the rails, right? He is lying to administrators. He is jumping digital firewalls to obsessively monitor her online channels.
He's screen recording their past interactions to build a case for his appeals. He is frantically seeking validation from his parents, his friends, and even circling back to 045 to extract comfort.
He is pulling every lever on the machine, trying to make it output the result he wants. Meanwhile, she stays entirely within the rules. She files her legitimate complaint and steps back.
But internally, she conducts what she calls an academic desensitization analysis of his behavior.
And we should probably define the mechanics of an academic desensitization analysis because it is such a powerful defensive tool.
It really is. Normally, when someone directs frantic, abusive, or manipulative behavior at you, the natural response is emotional. You feel anger, or fear, or guilt.
Right. But desensitization involves intentionally stripping away that emotional language.
Exactly. When he sends a furious message, she doesn't read it as a personal attack. She logs it as a predictable data point. She categorizes it like, this is escalation phase 2, frustration due to thwarted control.
By turning his abuse into variables in a study, She completely removes the trauma from the experience. She realizes she didn't write his broken code and she can't fix it.
The text describes her as merely catching his balls and using them as training material. She builds an observation deck high above the battlefield.
While he believes he is waging this epic war against her, he thinks he is the main character in a high-stakes drama.
But from her vantage point on the observation deck, every time he lies, every time he breaches a firewall, he is just voluntarily generating another fascinating data point for her ongoing research.
Research into the standard reaction patterns of thwarted power, she turned his hostile takeover into a footnote in her own psychological study. It's brilliant.
It is. And the philosophical weight of this outcome brings us back to that initial feeling of regret she mentioned. The wish that they could have just been casual chat buddies.
Right, because at first glance, expressing regret after someone has put you through a malicious escalation might look like a vulnerability. Like she's still emotionally hung up on the idea of him.
But it functions as the exact opposite. Her ability to feel that regret is proof that she survived his mechanical toxic system with her humanity entirely intact.
She didn't let his virus overwrite her source code. She still possesses the capacity for genuine, uncalculated friendship.
Yes, she has the ability to exist in a space with another human being without needing to map their vulnerabilities or leverage a position and lock them into a control loop.
She can just be. While the subject is trapped, running an exhausting, relentless program, he will never know the peace of existing without an agenda.
So that regret she feels belongs entirely to the goodness and normalcy she brought to the table. It has nothing to do with the opportunity missed, because his system is fundamentally incapable of recognizing that opportunity in the first place.
Wow. So we started with a refusal to apologize for a minor infraction, a metaphorical $20 parking ticket, and we watched that refusal escalate into a fabricated romance and a severe institutional warning.
And through the lens of this text analysis, we've traced the stark contrast between a person seeking a normal, lateral human connection and a system demanding total vertical control.
We explored the mechanics of the assess position control loop, and we saw exactly why tactics like cold violence fail completely against a person who refuses to plug into the abuser's emotional grid.
It really demonstrates the immense protective power of analytical detachment. When faced with highly toxic manipulative behavior, the strongest shield is often stepping back and viewing the behavior not as a personal indictment, but as a predictable mechanical failure of the other person's internal script.
Absolutely.
However, the narrator's brilliant defense mechanism leaves us with an unaddressed philosophical question to consider.
Oh, what's that?
Well, if we begin viewing all the toxic manipulative behavior directed at us purely as data points for our own psychological study, does that ultimate detachment make us completely invincible? Or is there a hidden danger lurking there?
Like a danger that by observing life so clinically from an elevated observation deck, we risk turning into a mechanical, unfeeling system ourselves.
Exactly. Does protecting our humanity run the risk of slowly dismantling it?
That is an incredibly profound thought to leave on. Thank you so much for joining me today and walking us through this text. And thank you, the listener, for coming along on this deep dive. Remember to keep looking beneath the surface of your own everyday interactions. We'll catch you next time.
Imagine